and welcome to my channel. For those of you who are newcomers, this channel teaches young people how to become financially successful. It's targeted to adults between the ages of, say, 16 to 30 years old. My lessons are in succession, and each lesson builds off the previous lessons, so I strongly urge that you start with lesson 1 and watch each successive lesson in order after that. Also, to help this channel grow and help many young people, could you please subscribe, like the videos, and press the notification bell so you'll be notified each time I post a new video. So, thanks, and let's start learning. Lesson 6, qualifying your mentor. Okay, so in lesson 5 we learned that to become successful we must watch what successful people do and copy them. We also learned to watch what unsuccessful people do and not copy them. Finally, we learned that you must qualify your mentors to make sure they are worth copying. I'm wanting to be your mentor, so I think you should know my background to see if my ideas are worth copying. Okay, I was born back in 1955 in Barrie, Ontario, Canada. I have one older brother. My parents were divorced when I was 9 years old. My mom was a stay-at-home housewife with a grade 8 education. She thought her whole mission in life was to get married, have a few kids, and live happily ever after. And education just wasn't that important to her because the husband would obviously take care of her for the rest of her life, right? Well, when my dad left my mom for another woman, her whole life unraveled. My mom, my brother, and I had to move from our middle-class home to a crappy little one-bedroom apartment. Now, because my mom only had a grade 8 education, she could only qualify for minimum wage jobs. She got a job cleaning rooms at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Barrie, but we were barely making ends meet. Now, my dad was a real jerk and he rarely paid child support. My mom got laid off from that job at the hospital and we couldn't pay the rent. We were evicted from that crappy little apartment, and because she had no money, we were actually homeless on the streets of Barrie for a while. No fun, let me tell you. She finally got another more steady job cleaning rooms at a nursing home, and she got us a decent 2-bedroom apartment. I was 14 years old at the time, and money was still really tight. My mom was definitely living paycheck to paycheck, and you know what? I'll never forget how awful living like that felt. The thing I learned from this chapter of my life is something that I want to pass on to all the young women out there. Never rely on the guy. Always be self-sufficient in case you guys split up and you have to go out on your own. Things changed when I turned 16. I got this job bagging groceries and stocking shelves at A&P, a local food store. I was only part-time and I started out with only one 4-hour shift. But as soon as I received that very first paycheck, a whopping $5.75 after taxes, I realized something. I realized that I like money. Having money took away the pains of poverty, but 4 hours a week wasn't going to cut it. I needed much more than that. From that point on, I decided to work my tail off at A&P. I let the managers know that I would do any job that they needed done, and that I would work any hours they needed when I wasn't going to school. My goal was to outwork every other employee. And looking back now and understanding the 80% theory, outworking the majority of the other employees was actually pretty easy. Very quickly, I was doing jobs that the other more senior employees didn't want to do. I was cleaning toilets, mopping floors, and basically doing whatever they asked of me. Within a short time, I was getting 24 hours a week, which was the maximum any part-time employee could get. A&P was a unionized company, so they had rules to follow. Many of the more senior part-time employees were actually getting pissed off at me because I was getting more hours than them. But, you know, oh well, that's their problem, right? My mom never charged me any room and board, and I never really bought anything, so my money started stockpiling very quickly. Within a few short months, I had saved enough money to buy my very first car. It was a 1961 Pontiac Parisienne with its ultra-reliable 283 cubic inch V8 engine. I paid $200 for it, and it lasted for 3 years with virtually no maintenance expense whatsoever. What an awesome car. I actually wish I still had it now. Okay, so the things I learned from this chapter of my life is that poverty sucks, but poverty can also be a great motivator. I learned if you work your tail off very quickly, you'll be promoted within your company. And I learned that if you live well below your means, you can save a lot of money very quickly. Okay, let's fast forward to 1981. In 1981, I moved from Barrie to Ventura, California. I started a painting company called Wizard Painting. I took my hard work ethic from my A&P days and applied it to my painting trade, and my customers loved it. I also used a couple of business secrets that I had learned that made my customers love me even more. The first secret is to always be on time. I would always be ready to start work at least 5 minutes before my scheduled start time. So many people nowadays don't respect the other person's time and feel it's okay to show up 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even 30 minutes late. Some people just don't even show up. These people are in the 80%, and that's why it's so easy to outwork them. The other business secret that I applied was to always do a little bit extra. As an example, if I was painting the exterior of the home, I might wash the home's windows as well, or maybe I'd rake their flower beds. It really didn't take that much extra time to do this stuff, and reality was it made my paint job look even better to the customer. Also, the customers really noticed that I did that extra work. Now, I'm definitely in the top 20% of my field, right? There's an old saying that says the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. Well, if you can do that little extra in your field, rest assured you'll be soaring into that top 20% very quickly. Because my customers love my quality work in painting, they started asking if I could do other repairs on their home, such as replacing a faucet, a light fixture, or even a toilet. I told them that I had never done those repairs before, but you know what? I would learn how and not charge them for my learning time. Within a short time, I was doing complete bathroom remodels, tiling counters, building fences, and pretty much any construction job the customer wanted. At that time, Wizard Painting could probably have been renamed Wizard Construction. I was always on time, always did the extra, and always did the highest quality work. And because of that, I never had to advertise. Word of mouth referrals kept me extremely busy. One of those referrals led me to a fellow named Keith. Little did I know that this Keith fellow would greatly change my life. Keith was a very successful real estate agent who also ran a property management company. I started out doing a couple of small repair jobs for Keith's property management company, and within a very short time, I was his main handyman for his entire company. The year was 1983, and I had been working for Keith and his property management company for a few months when he came to me and offered me a deal. But before I tell you about the deal, I have to tell you that back in February of 1982, I met this wonderful girl named Connie. We fell in love, and in April of 1983, we got married. I'm proud to say that in April of this year, 2019, Connie and I will have been married 36 years. We have 2 wonderful children, and as of this date, 2 adorable grandchildren. Remember how I mentioned that good spouses can be great life teachers and help you rise to the highest levels? That was the case with Connie. She was very thrifty and money-wise, and without her, I'm sure I wouldn't be as successful as I am today. Now, back to Keith Steele. One day, back in 1983, I went into Keith's office to get paid for a job, and he said to me, "Hey, would you and Connie like to buy this fixer-upper duplex that I have for sale?" It was the ugliest property on the street, the whole block for that matter. But we could buy it for only $59,000. Each of the units had 1 bedroom and 1 bath. Connie and I went and looked at the property, and I saw that it was very structurally sound and just a tremendous cosmetic fixer-upper. The yard, it was like terribly overgrown. The place needed painted inside and out, and the floors needed refinishing. There were numerous things that needed fixing, but nothing that I couldn't do quickly and for a low price. After all, my labor would be free. We did some calculations and figured that fixed up, each unit could rent for $425 per month. It was an absolute great deal. But Connie and I had a couple of problems. Our first problem is that we only had $1,000 in the bank. Also, with me being a self-employed painter / handyman and Connie not making very much money at the record store where she worked, we didn't qualify for a mortgage through like a traditional lender. But Keith, he could see how much we wanted the deal, so he worked his magic and convinced the owner, who happened to be this sweet retired lady, that Connie and I were good, reliable people, and that if she carried the paper, it would be nice extra retirement income for her. She owned the place free and clear, and she agreed to carry the paper if we could come up with 10% down payment. Well, her agreeing to carry a $53,100 mortgage was one big hurdle that we overcame, but hey, where were we going to get the 10% down payment? We only had $1,000 in the bank, and both of our families were living paycheck to paycheck and had absolutely no extra money. It was crazy, but I actually went to this doctor who I had done only 1 week's worth of painting for him and his wife, and told him about the deal being offered to us. And I asked him if he could lend us $8,000 and then we would pay him back $10,000 after 2 years, would he be okay with that? Our jaws dropped when he said he'd be glad to do it. We closed the deal using $5,900 for the down payment. The seller carried a $53,100 note at 12% interest-only payments, and we used that balance of that $8,000 from the doctor for closing costs. After the deal closed, we still had our original $1,000 in the bank. Connie and I had completed our first nothing down deal, and we were ecstatic. We quickly got the place fixed up and rented out both units for $425 per month each. We were collecting $950 per month, and our total payment, including the payment of the seller, the payment of the doctor, property taxes, and insurance, came to right at about $700 per month. We were getting $250 per month positive cash flow, putting in absolutely none of our own money into the deal. Also, Keith did a market analysis on the property after we had fixed it up and told us that it was now worth $85,000. We were like so stoked. We were already up over $25,000 in equity. That deal inspired me to do a major life-changing career change. In January of 1984, I got my real estate license and began my 30-year career selling real estate. My first 15 years were at Century 21 County Center. Once again, I took my hard work ethic and applied it this time to real estate sales. Within a very short time, I was one of the top producing agents in that company. Now, I consider myself very, very fortunate to have chosen to go work for Century 21 County Center. Not only was it the highest producing office in all of Ventura County, but among its 40 agents were a few multimillionaires who had made their fortune by investing in real estate. One of those successful agents told me, hey, you know what? You're not going to get rich from your real estate sales commissions. What's going to make you rich are your investments. Those multimillionaire agents were so kind, and they were always eager to share their successful investment strategies with me. Connie and I bought our first duplex in 1983. At that time, we had $1,000 in the bank. In 1988, Connie and I owned 13 properties, and our net worth was over $1 million. We had become millionaires in less than 5 years. But then, in November of 1988, I noticed a strange thing happening. Properties stopped selling quickly. I noticed that even sizzle-hot properties in those sizzle-hot neighborhoods were sitting on the market and not selling. Then I started seeing price reductions on these sizzle-hot properties. I had never seen that before. In 1989, a little thing called a recession hit the United States. Property values stopped going up and instead began to plummet. All of our properties were highly leveraged, and in 1988, our properties were giving us a $3,000 per month negative cash flow. You see, we had gotten into this habit of borrowing everything for every purchase, even if it was a negative cash flow on that property. Now we did this because it made sense business-wise. As an example, even though our 13 properties were giving us a $36,000 negative cash flow for that year, in 1988 alone, the values of those 13 properties rose $400,000. You can see why we were glad to continue with that strategy. But then the recession hits, and we quickly start doing the math and see that, wait, we need to dump the highly leveraged properties as soon as possible. By 1994, when the recession was over, property values had dropped about 40%. We only had one investment property left, and even that property was upside down. It was a 10-plex, and we owed $655,000 on it, and it was only worth $450,000. The only reason we kept it is because it was the only property that we had that was giving us a positive cash flow. It was giving us about $1,000 a month positive cash flow. We went from being millionaires to being basically broke in 5 short years. Our financial ride down was as quick as it was going up. In 1995, the values of real estate had fallen back so much that they were similar to the numbers on our very first purchase of that little duplex. You could borrow the down payment, borrow the balance of the purchase price, borrow the closing costs, and even borrow the fix-up costs, and your rents would pay for the entire payments. Even though we lost pretty much everything in the recession from 1989 to 1994, I still believed in investing in real estate, and I still had the knowledge how to do it. Remember retention from lesson 4? In 1995, Connie and I started buying properties again. Only this time we did it smart. We only bought properties that gave us break-even or positive cash flows. I was going to watch the market signs, and this time there was no way that I was going to lose my fortune. In the year 2000, the dot-com bubble burst, and many real estate agents thought that the real estate bubble was going to burst too. But I didn't see it. My little gauge was watching the sizzle-hot properties. If they were still selling quickly and going up in value, that was telling me that our real estate economy is still good. In 2000, those sizzle-hot properties were still doing just fine. But in August of 2005, the warning bells started ringing. I noticed that the sizzle-hot properties stopped selling quickly, and we were starting to see price reductions on them, just to get them to sell. By 2006, we had entered the Great Recession. From 2006 to 2010, property values plummeted as much as 50% in some areas. Many people lost their jobs. Multitudes of people went bankrupt. Millions of people lost their homes to foreclosure. But Connie and I were pretty much unaffected by the entire recession. Sure, we lost value in the properties that we owned, but that didn't matter. We weren't selling. Every property was giving us a positive cash flow, and we didn't need to sell. I saw the recession coming way back in August of 2005, so we started cutting back our other living expenses at that time. We made it through the worst recession since the Great Depression, no problem. When the Great Recession ended in 2010, the values of the properties were very, very low. And just like back in 1994, when that first recession ended, you could once again borrow everything to buy the properties, and the rents would pay for all of it. So guess what Connie and I did? That's right, we bought more properties. By 2014, we had acquired enough properties, and those properties were giving us enough positive cash flow that I was able to retire at 58 years old. Connie has also retired, and currently we are multimillionaires with monthly cash flow that increases each year. So that's my story. There's actually a lot more to this story, but I don't want to bore you with a 2-hour video. Now, here's the reason I think I'm a better mentor than many of the get-rich strategy YouTubers out there. I'm old enough to have lived through 2 really, really rough recessions, and I know the strategies, not only how to make a fortune in real estate starting with nothing, but also I know how to prevent you from losing it all. Many of the YouTubers out there are young adults who have been fortunate enough to have invested in the good times, and they've made a fortune during those good times. They've never experienced the really horrible, horrible times though. It'll be interesting to see how many of them will still be making videos on how to make millions of dollars in real estate when the next recession hits. Well, that's all for today. Sorry for the long video, but I want you to know my story so you can qualify me to see if I'm worthy to be your mentor. I hope so. Until next time, thanks for watching and see you soon.